Hello and welcome students. In this lesson we will be learning about the outer walls of a cell, so specifically plant cells, and the control center, which is the nucleus of a cell. So the cell wall or the outer wall of a cell, this is a feature that is kind of unique to plant cells, not animal cells usually. So it acts as a rigid armor that protects the internals of the cell. Now this is important for plant cells specifically because they cannot move around and protect themselves from, say, rain and other environmental factors. For us humans, if those factors occur, we can just go and take shelters, but the plants have to weather all of those different environments. So because of this, the cells inside the plant need some extra protection. So that protection is afforded to them by this plant, the cell wall. So it is a layer outside the plasma membrane. So this is the plasma membrane, this thin line over here, and right outside this thick outer green line, that is the cell wall of a plant cell. So unlike animals, plant cells possess an extra outer covering located outside the cell membrane, and this is called the cell wall. So this is not present in animal cells. This is only present in plant cells. In plants, it is primarily made of cellulose, a complex carbohydrate that provides extreme structural strength and rigidity. So now another aspect of this is that these cells are very rigid and they provide the plant the rigidity. So this cannot be the case with the animals. If the animals are rigid, they cannot move around, right? So this is another reason why it is not present in the animals. So even though these are the cell walls, they are really highly permeable. They may seem rigid, they may seem hard, but they are very permeable. They allow for waters and minerals to pass through very easily. So in the next one, so why do plants need it? So as I have discussed before, first is that they're stationary in nature, so they cannot really move around freely, and because of this they need protection from the environmental stress that is put upon them. Other thing is maintaining the shape. So the cell walls help leaves and flowers remain firm, maintaining their specific shape, and help the overall plant stay upright. So they provide rigidity, they provide strength, and they provide the shape. Next is the dietary roughage. So specifically in case of animals that consume those plants, so the cellulose from plant cells, cell walls, acts as a crucial dietary roughage for humans, aiding in digestion. Since we have already discussed about the osmosis and the various environments, which is hypertonic, isotonic, and hypotonic, let's see how the cell wall interacts with those. Okay, so in case of a hypotonic environment where the concentration of water is higher outside the cell than inside, you can see over here the outer walls kind of bloat up. So it is called a turgid state. So it provides turgidity to the water. It swells up and it is still very tightly packed within the cell walls. In isotonic state, nothing really happens. The water goes out, the water goes in. So the state is maintained. In case of hypertonics, you can see the cell is plasmalized. In this case, the cell walls are maintained, but the internals of the cell shrink because they lose all the water, a lot of the water. Now we will discuss about the nucleus, the brain of the cell, which contains all the information, which contains all the things that are embedded inside the cell. Okay, so nuclear membrane, a double layer covering the nucleus. So it protects the nucleus. So this is a double layered wall that protects the nucleus. Then there are nuclear poles, tiny holes that allow for the transfer of specific materials between the nucleus and the cytoplasm. And then there is a nucleus, so which is the central part of the cell. Okay, so now we will discuss the structure of the nucleus. So there are three main things to discuss. First is the nuclear membrane. So this is the outer layer which has some pores, which is the second thing. So this acts as a double layer, it covers the nucleus entirely. Okay, then there are nuclear pores. These are tiny holes that allow for the transfer of specific materials between the nucleus and the cytoplasm. Now cytoplasm is a liquid that this whole nucleus structure is floating in. So it will be the liquid that is outside this. Okay, and then there is the nucleus, which is a dense rough body in the middle of the structure. So this is the main body. Now we will learn about the packaging of this DNA, how this DNA is packaged, how this DNA is transferred. So we have previously learned that the cells reproduce by splitting up. Now the new cells that are produced have certain information from the previous cell, so they maintain the same information. So both the cells are identical. Therefore, there is a need for this DNA to travel from this cell to another cell. Now I'll give you an analogy over here. So imagine there's a stationary house, there's just a normal house, okay, and let there be thread just spread all around the house. Okay, so now this thread is all the information that is needed. If it is spread all around the house, it is really easy to find, okay, because the information is right there for you to find. An easier example for this would be, say you have to choose an outfit among multiple outfits, right? You may put them on the bed and you can select, like, I think this one will look better on me. So in this case, it is very easy for you to choose the outfit. It's better option to select the best looking outfit for yourself. Okay, similarly in a cell, normally this information is stored in a chromatin fiber, which it contains all the information, which is very easily accessible. Now imagine you have to shift house. Would it be easier for you to pack all of those clothing into a bag and just fold the clothing up, pack it into bag and carry it, or would it be easier to carry it in this messy format? So obviously it will be better to carry it in a packed format. So the DNA needs to pack itself into a condensed form, which is easier for it to transfer into the second cell. So what happens over here is, this is a normal DNA strand, you may have seen this is a helical structure of it, okay, and eventually it packs itself into chromatin, which is easily found in the cell. But when it needs to transfer, it packs itself into a chromosome. Chromosome is nothing but these threads that I was talking about earlier. They're just tightly packed together, they're tightly wound by a wire, I guess, if that helps. So they're tightly packed together into a format which contains a lot of information, and these chromosomes are transferred from one cell to the other one when they split. Okay, and then these chromosomes unpack themselves for those cells to develop. So over here we'll read the definitions as well. In a normal non-dividing cell, DNA is present as chromatin. So a normal undivided cell, the DNA will be present as chromatin fiber. So it's present as chromatin material, which is just simply, it contains the information which is really easy to read. Okay, an entangled mess of threads like structure. So it's an entangled mess of threads, the threads example I gave you. Okay, however, whenever a cell is about to divide, the chromatin is highly condensed and organized into distinct rod-like shapes, and this structure is known as chromosome. So this chromatin is highly compressed into these rod-like shapes, and it's like really highly condensed, so that the transfer occurs, and then in the new cell it can be unpacked into chromatin. So naturally it occurs, normally it is in the form of chromatins, which are easy to read information, and then they split into then they got condensed into chromosomes through transfer. So you can imagine the messy transfer if you had to carry all those clothes together and just carry them to your new house. and then over there they unpack. So at your new place you can unpack those clothes from your bag and put them in your cupboard or wherever you like them. So this is how the DNA is packaged and transferred. So this is the delivery process of DNA, and this is what carries the genes and inheritance. So you may see, for example, the facial structure of you and your parents will be similar. You may have heard this, like you look similar to your mother or you look similar to your father. This is due to the genes and inheritance, which is usually carried through DNA. So chromosomes are composed of DNA. You saw those helical structures. Those were little DNA strands which were packed into chromatins, which were further packed into the chromosomes. Okay, and the DNA molecules contain crucial genetic information required for constructing and organizing the cell. So these these DNAs transfer the information to the cells, and those cells form in a manner which is similar to the original being, and that is why the child usually looks similar to their parents. Okay, functional segments. So the functional segment of a DNA are called genes. So the things that actually matter, the things that transfer that information, for example, say the nose or other things that look familiar, right? So these are the functional segments of DNA. So these things change the body of the next being, for example, and they'll make it look similar to the previous body. So these are the functional segments of the DNA, and they're called the genes. They carry the information for the inheritance of characters from the parent to the next generation. Okay, so these functional segments, which are the genes, carry the main information. Now pretty much all the cells contain nucleus, but there are some exceptions. So these exceptions, they are called enucleates. So the enucleates are the type of cells that do not have nucleus, and because of this lack of nucleus, they are unable to reproduce. They are not able to split up. So since these cells do not have any nucleus, they only have a lifespan of 120 days. So the red blood cells, for example, they only last 120 days, and they cannot reproduce because they do not have the nucleus. So some specialized cells like mature red blood cells in humans do not have the nucleus, and the reason is the specialized part. Basically the reason is so that it can carry more of that oxygen, more of the materials that the red blood cells needs to carry. So that is the main reason for them not carrying the nucleus. The absence of the nucleus provides more space for hemoglobin, allowing it to transfer a large amount of oxygen to the body. So that is why the nucleus is missing. Because they lack nucleus, they cannot repair or divide, resulting in a short lifespan of 120 days. So because of this, they cannot repair or divide. Now you may think that how do humans survive then? Because the red blood cells will die in 120 days, right? And we take in food, and these red blood cells are recycled by our body. So the irons inside the blood cells and everything, they are recycled by our body. They are absorbed into bone marrow and regenerated through all the food and water that we consume into new red blood cells. So students, this is the end of this lesson. We have discussed about the cell wall, which is present in the plants, which is has a function of protecting the cell from the outer environment, and why that is necessary. Because unlike animals, they cannot move around. The plants are stationary in their place, and because of this, they need the cell wall. And next, we have also discussed about the nucleus, which is the main brains of the cell, and where we have also discussed about the transportation of genes. We have also the transportation of DNA from one cell to another, and how it occurs, because the DNA gets compacted into chromatins, which is the normal form, and that further gets compacted into chromosomes, which when the cell splits are transferred to the new cell, and because of this the information is carried forward to the new cells. So this is it for this lesson. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.